Good day to you all. Always a pleasure to be with you to share on God's Word. Our readings this weekend on the 30th Sunday in Ordinary Time come to us from Sirach 35, which speaks of a God of justice who listens to the voices of the poor and the oppressed. Psalm 34, which echoes this theme. The response is the Lord hears the cry of the poor. The second reading taken from 2 Timothy 4, where St. Paul speaks of his life as being poured out as a libation, as an offering to God, and that is so true of our lives as well. And our gospel reading taken from Luke 18, 9-14, the story of the Pharisee and the tax collector. So let's get on with it. We have with us a rather tricky gospel reading this weekend. It's one of those readings where what seems to be wrong doesn't seem to be that bad after all. And there's several of these readings in the gospel. You would remember, of course, the story of Lazarus and the rich man, where we are told that the rich man feasted sumptuously on food and dressed in fine linen, while Lazarus the poor man lay there at the gate of the rich man and longed to eat even the scraps that fell from his table. Well, we are not told that the rich man was necessarily a bad person. He was probably a man who had worked very hard and who was enjoying the fruits of his success. But in the very next part of the story, we are told that the rich man is in hell and Lazarus is in heaven. Everything has been turned topsy-turvy, and you have to reflect a little more deeply to discover the meaning of the reading. And the meaning, of course, is that it is not so much what the rich man did as what he did not do that condemned him. He did not respond in a spirit of generosity to the needs of Lazarus. We have a similar situation before us, the story of the two men praying in the temple, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee prays in a very boastful manner. He says here in verse 11, "I fast twice a week, and I pay tithes on my whole income." And give Jack his jacket. He really did these things. Put in Catholic terms, he attended Mass regularly. He says the Rosary daily. He supports the church financially. He reads the Catholic Register and the church bulletin from cover to cover. And he keeps up with papal announcements. He is probably a Knight of Columbus. He really is a very good Catholic, a good Jew. He does even more than he was supposed to. According to Jewish tradition, you are only obligated to fast once a year. Well, this man fasts twice a week. And everything that he does is mentioned in the book of Psalms. This guy is really a good person, the type of person, my dear mothers, that you would not mind your child getting married to. He's not so bad after all. But he's a little bit boastful. But my question is, what is so wrong with that? Who isn't? We all like to sound our trumpet now and then, don't we? We have to dig a little bit deeper here, and I think the key to understanding the passage is verse 10, where he does a no-no. He compares himself to others. It says here in verse 10, "O God, I thank you that I am not like the rest of humanity, greedy, dishonest, adulterous, or even like this tax collector." When you go to church, when you pray, there should be no time to look around at other people. It's you and your God. And this line gives us a little window into the heart of this man, who seems to be very nice on the outside. But what we see inside is pretty awful. He suffers from what you might call religious self-righteousness, something I think that afflicts all of us. The feeling that we are more righteous than others. And we all do it. The rich despise the poor, the learned despise the ignorant, the strong and healthy despise the weak and ailing, the devout despises the irreverent. The list goes on and on. There's a kind of an in-group, out-group mentality that sometimes afflicts some religious people. It's a kind of arrogance that perpetuates itself by constantly criticizing others. These people are always finding fault because they belong to a superior class. And it's not just the feeling that you are right and others are wrong. The Greek word used here is the word ethothios, and it means to regard others with scorn or contempt, to hold someone to be of no account, which is a pretty terrible thing when you come to think of it. When we treat people with contempt, we deny their human dignity before God. We are telling God, you see this human being that you created? Well, that person is worth nothing. And thank God I am not like them. Which is an awful sin. You are criticizing God. You are abrogating to yourself something that only God has the right to do. It is the height of arrogance. It is not, it was, I remember a few years ago when we speak about this kind of religious self-righteousness. I was just about to start Mass on a Saturday evening, and suddenly a car pulled into the parking lot outside the church, tires squealing, music playing very loudly. And a girl stepped out. She slammed the door, and she was wearing a short skirt and a tight-fitting top. Her hair was dyed green, and piercing and tattoos everywhere. And we all stared as she made her way to the front door. Some of us, I guess, stared in a very disapproving way. But she walked right by us in a kind of defiant way. No one made an attempt to greet her, and she sat at the back of the church. Now, I don't know what brought that girl to Mass that Sunday. Maybe some feeling that her life was missing something. And surely, instead of staring and judging in our self-righteous way, we could have made an attempt to reach out, to smile, to say, hello, how are you? Can I take you to your seat? Are you from the neighborhood? Instead, we all stared, and the ushers made no attempt to greet her. Well, we never saw her back in church again. So we must be careful. We must pray to remain humble before God and recognize the dignity of all human beings, especially those that we disagree with and those whom we treat with scorn. We need to see that these others are people, just like us, sinners who rely on God's mercy to be healed. The tax collector, we are told in the story, cried out, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. And Jesus tells us that that man was justified or made righteous, not by his own certainty, but by the judgment of a merciful and loving God. God bless you this weekend. Take care.